as a branding consultant, I get asked, what do you really do? And besides the marketing and sales side of what I do when I work with an existing brand, when I work with new brands or people who are maybe changing their brand, I work on something called ethos with them, which is really the essence that you want your brand to have. And ethos is really important. We've seen some recent examples where brands abandon their original ethos that allowed them to be built, like the Cracker Barrel example, where they took out, the original founder from the logo and remodeled all the stores for completely removing the cozy feeling and even changing the menus. And that was all because of what the corporation wanted to do by putting profits first and basically sacrificing their ethos. So in this video, I wanted to make a really good example, or I wanted to make a really good lesson on what is ethos, how you can develop it. And once you do this, you'll really understand what it takes to make a good offer, no matter what the offer is. Because if you can correctly answer and authentically answer all of the different anchors that I'm about to show you, then you should almost certainly, whether your audience is niche or broad, be able to grow brand ethos and hopefully get people on board with your brand, and then just have the products that you guys provide be simply complementary to the ethos of the brand that people really relate to. And this sounds really heady and conceptual, but once we get into it, I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised by how simple this process is. All right, let's get started. Okay, I'm a slideshow making genius, so these are going to look really fancy. I'm being sarcastic. So, what is branding? Branding starts with ethos. This is also sometimes called narrative dialogue. It's the values. It's really all of these things. So, how do we develop it? Well, first, you have to understand that branding is the power of changing the perception of things to be more valuable, right? So, like, you can eat an apple and it could just be an apple and it could be a sweet treat. It could then be something that's really healthy for you. So, by eating apples, you're making choices to be a healthier person. And then it could go even broader and be an experience that's shared. So, you're being a healthier person to eat apples by eating apples so that you can be there longer for your family. So that's where we're changing the perception of what is a simple apple to really an ethos around the behavior of eating apples. So the perception shift really needs to be authentic. It's not, manipulation tactics don't work here, because you can't just tell a consumer what they want. You have to understand what they want and tell them how they can get it by participating or being a part of your brand. There is a systematic approach for creating ethos, and you have to ask the question, if the product or offer was to go away entirely, would the feeling that you helped the audience invoke or that you invoked with the audience, would that last even if the product went away? If apples went away, people would still worry about their health. They still would want to be there with their family for a longer period of time. So ethos starts with what I call the good old days. It's really a nostalgia factor. It's extremely powerful emotional trigger in branding. It gives brands a way to feel familiar and trustworthy, even if they're new or entering a new market or just launching. We develop the good old days by wondering what life was like before the innovation existed. And this doesn't have to be your innovation. This could be the industry-wide innovation. So an example, I'd like to include examples. Before we had phones, we used to talk with each other and connect with our community and neighbors. It's not saying that the phones are inherently bad. It is just talking about what the good old days look like. And you could even go deeper and say, remember the last time your neighbor actually knocked on your door and asked for sugar or eggs? Me neither. And so another example is, before there were large hotel conglomerates, when you'd take a road trip, you'd live among the locals at the local bed and breakfast. And so you can paint this good old days picture by saying, uh, imagine you're on a road trip with your parents and you just woke up in the back row of the car and you see a big sign and you know that you're at the hotel for the break for the night. And that's not, yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. Or if it happens, it's almost just like a treat. There's a nostalgia around it. So you need to ensure nostalgia feels authentic and not manufactured by making sure it's actually a time that existed or something that actually would happen. They talk about how Friends, the show, is like a time that never was. That's true, but there is an idea of a group of people who, had early adulthood growing up in the city together. So you should connect with real references and stories that are relatable, that people have likely experienced, or at least your target audience has experienced. The next anchor in the process is modern comparison. So this is where you're saying, is what we have now actually what we asked for, essentially? And it forces the audience to question the assumptions about progress and innovation. It addresses the common traps that brands fall into when they're trying to offer something as new and improved. Sometimes people don't want things to improve past the point of losing the experience that they had. And it helps brands find a position that they take on the nostalgia factor that they're trying to have their audience relate to. So this is where you could actually redefine what your brand does, the value it provides, and maybe even be a little contrarian. So we deliver genuine improvement, but we want to honor what people actually miss if we're going to be referencing the good old days. So make sure that you're focusing on what the customers value versus what the companies should think they should have. So I'm going to just imagine I have like a social media network and it's new and it's about connection. So I would be like, sure, you have Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, but are we really connecting with people and building relationships? If my app is community focused about you, maybe finding a local yoga group or a local run club. This might be a good example for things like Strava. Um, and then a comparison with Uber, let's just say I have a ride sharing app that's for people who, are parents that do the carpool exchange. That doesn't exist anymore. And people don't really use the bus. So I could be like, yeah, we're able to get rides at the, push of a button, but are we truly supporting our local economy or our local community? And that would be if I had like an app, for example, that was like for parents who wanted to do carpool trades, or for people who wanted to do, when one person cooks for all of the neighbors and each person has a day of the week where they're, instead of meal prepping for themselves for the whole week, we all just feed our neighbors. So the third anchor is now where we go into what this says about us. And this is where we build the sense of belonging with our audience, so that they feel like they have they already inherently have this sense of desire to belong, but that we can actually create the bridge for that. So it combines the tension between the good old days and the modern comparisons, and then it prompts the person experiencing the brand, to also question if they're behaving in that manner. So it goes into culture and community, and it sets up the brand as a gathering point for like-minded people. So you need to make sure that you know who you're talking to and what their values actually are that they identify with. And so, in the first example, if I have a new social media platform that helps people connect with run clubs or whatever, I may be like, whatever happened to actually checking in on somebody because you genuinely were thinking of them, not prompted to by social media because they posted a picture of their trip to Greece? When's the last time you've actually thought of that? When's the last time you thought, oh man, I miss Kelly? I haven't heard from Kelly in a long time. I hope Kelly's okay. So now I'm actually like painting that picture for them. Or why are we so willing to give up minor conveniences at a cost of someone else's livelihood? Yeah, Uber's great, but how is Uber actually supporting that single mom in the neighborhood who can't afford to Uber her kids, but would be happy to drive your kids once a week, in exchange for you to do it once a week, in exchange for Nancy to do it once a week. And now everybody's driving the kids once a week, and life becomes more manageable for everybody instead of us supporting Uber, the large, rideshare conglomerate. So then we go into the philosophical questions. This is a very tricky part. Clients really struggle with the philosophical question, but it's supposed to go beyond marketing tactics. It's supposed to go into needs. You don't need to be, I can't remember the word. You don't need to be a genius to do this. It does imply depth and authenticity. It is timeless. Like those questions that are kind of implied in what I was talking about earlier, are not a question of whether or not they've been around for a long time or if that people agree with it. Oh, I meant to say stoics. So you don't have to be a stoic, to do this. And they shouldn't require quick answers. Okay. So it's about our existence. It forces brands to grapple with their own identity in society. It creates for brands to stand for something. So an example would be like, when's the last time you genuinely thought about somebody from your heart? If I have a social connection app, or do you remember the last time you connected with the local business owner to support who they are, not just what they can do for you? Kind of challenging that transactional thinking that people maybe have that people don't actually like. The fifth anchor is consequences. We're almost done here. So this forces accountability, and it talks. Now we're actually addressing kind of that elephant in the room with the audience. It makes the philosophical question tangible. It puts power into your audience's decisions that they make, which they really want, and it moves them from what they believe to what happens to us because of what we believe. And so it's not supposed to be divisive. A strong brand would be able to handle this really easily, in my opinion, if they're actually innovating. It forces the consideration of brand impact beyond profits. It makes the brand story feel substantial. So if we lose touch with each other, we will never feel supported during times we need real support. If we don't support our local businesses, then we'll be forced into the box of what the corporate world wants us to be in. Nobody wants that. And then finally, you're going to want to present a call to action, which is not you being the hero, it's you allowing your audience to be the hero. So they can reclaim what's lost. It creates urgency. There's always a natural urgency. It builds community. It makes purchase decisions feel meaningful and sometimes even rebellious. So you want to position your customers as a hero, and your brand as a mechanism for your customer to become the hero. It allows your audience to assign themselves identity, and it brings assurance that their values are valid. And it also offers them a solution to a problem that they have, by simply engaging with your brand, agreed existed. So it's time for you to call a friend, give them some meaningful attention, join the runclubapp.com and start connecting with people. It's time to support your neighbor. Start giving rides today. Go to familyrideshare.com. Support your local business owner beyond just a sale. Encourage them by sharing their story with your neighborhood to keep them alive with Yelp. And then you can simply show them how your brand is actually a vehicle to a larger mission. And again, very authentic. I hope you found that helpful. And those are pretty easy questions to answer. If you just spend some time on it, and if you already have a product or a brand, this may help you with your new offer. If you want to know more about how you can build strong branding in your business, go to brandlab2025.com. I have a free book there, I have free videos. I email my list every single week with free videos on what I'm doing, what I'm testing, what I've learned from those tests, and how they can do it too. So go to brandlab2025.com, get my book for free, and then you'll be on my list and you can get my newsletter where I can teach you this stuff all the time.